Today we have two amazing guests on, Chris Long and Sarah Evans, on their new partnership to bring and scale clean water systems to East Africa. Chris Long is a two-time Super Bowl champion and 2018 Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year award winner. He is also the creator of the Chris Long Foundation, which mobilizes ambassadors, service providers, and experts to help communities access clean water, address basic needs for youth and families, and inspire others to make an impact at home and abroad. Their vision is access and opportunity everywhere. To date, the Waterboys initiative has provided clean water to over 500,000 people in need, and with this new partnership with WellAware, they're looking to scale that to over 1 million and beyond. Sarah Evans is the co-founder and CEO of Well Beyond, a social enterprise providing expertise and the tools to organizations and governments on water development and health initiatives. She's also the founder of WellAware, an international nonprofit that funds and implements clean water systems for impoverished communities in Africa. WellAware is known for its sustainability model in building lasting water systems with high impact. Under her leadership, WellAware's reputation for project success and cost effectiveness has prompted numerous collaborations with other NGOs worldwide to guide their water infrastructure projects. Their project success rate is 100% versus 40% industry average. Let's get into the conversation. Well, thank you so much, Sarah and Chris, for joining me today. Super excited to chat about both of your journeys into the issue of clean water and the partnership that you struck just now recently. And the work that's going to be done is probably going to be pretty incredible. Before we sort of get started, I kind of wanted to down both of your paths into how did the issue of clean water even come into your lives? Because, you know, it's such a nascent issue a little bit here in the U.S., but globally it's a big deal. So Sarah, if you want to go first, talk a little bit about your journey into clean water.
Yeah, I was not planning on this to be my career. Chris knows I was a lawyer and on a pretty decent career path, but I met a friend who asked if I would help on this project to raise some funding for this project that she was doing in Kenya. And I thought, well, yeah, sure, I'll help. That sounds exciting. And I'll rewind just a bit because coincidentally, in undergrad, I majored in civil engineering, and then I went to law school and I focused on environmental engineering, and I worked for EPA in clean water. And so the project that was brought to my attention was to revive this community in Kenya. And her plan was to raise the money to buy some livestock because that is the main source of livelihood for the Maasai community there. And I said, yes, I'm in, let's do this. And as I do, I started to get sort of obsessed with the project. And I thought, well, I found through my research that the livestock were dying because they didn't have water on a regular basis. And because there was such a dramatic lack of water, it was causing almost all the other problems in this region, in all of the regions who are in similar circumstances. And so I said, hey, you know what? Let's instead let's drill a well. And then we can replace the livestock and we can have all these other incredible impacts. And everybody agreed. And then we had no idea what we were doing, but we were
classic way to start.
No clue. But we raised the money and we did that first project. And then that was the pivotal moment of my life when I decided that I would direct all of my efforts toward this cause.
Wow. Chris, you want to jump in and talk a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't think anything happens on accident, but it sure felt like just kind of luck ending up in Tanzania for me. And, obviously as a football player in the NFL, I had spent most of my time doing that in the off seasons. I was training. It was kind of a pretty routine kind of lifestyle for me, routine oriented. And I wanted to bust out of that a little bit one off season. And I had a new coach named Jeff Fisher. And I'll always remember like going in his office and meeting him. And he had this picture of people climbing Kilimanjaro, and he was up there. And I said, I'd really like to do that one day. And of course, he didn't want me to do it while I played, but I decided to do it anyways while I played. And I went to Tanzania, stayed in Arusha, spent time in Moshi.
Wow.
Did the climb, came down. I had one of my best buddies, one of my teammates with me, and we were at the bar having a drink afterwards. And in walks Joe Buck, who's a baseball announcer and a football announcer, if you know him, but he's also a Missouri guy. And at the time I was playing in St. Louis. So once we got over the shock of running into each other, I asked him why he was there. And he introduced me to a guy named Doug Pitt. And they were there on a water project. And so they kind of spent the evening telling me and my friend James Hall about, the obvious delta between, how we live and how Tanzanians live when it comes to access to clean water. It was something that I picked up on while I was there, but they really helped color in the lines for me, and couldn't join them on a project the next day. But when I got home, I really marinated on, I was at this intersection where I wanted to start a foundation, but didn't know exactly what kind of work I wanted to get into. And I'm very pragmatic. I'm very into efficiency and being very purposeful with my time and efforts and with donor money. And I just love, the fact that when you donate to water, I mean, not only are you answering a call that's absolutely necessary, and that, like in Tanzania, for instance, less than 50% of the people in rural areas have clean water. It's a dire need, but it's also a very straight line to success. You really feel like if you give money to this cause, you can illustrate to donors where their money's going, how far it's going, and all the different areas that it can touch, not just, quenching somebody's thirst or saving a life, but there's so many areas. It's a multifaceted problem, but there's so many solutions as well when you implement clean water. So for me, I was sold and started Waterboys, and now almost a decade later, we're still rolling and we've got new partners and super excited.
Yeah. So let's talk about the partnership. So Chris Long Foundation, the Waterboys Initiative, and Well Aware sort of partnering up now after you've both had, a decade long to kind of doing your work separately and kind of coming together. I guess, how did this manifest? Like, how does the partnership like this come together? And I guess, what are some of the goals that you want to achieve together?
Yeah, I think I'm not entirely sure. I do think that there's a team at the Waterboy or at the Chris Long Foundation who were actively seeking a really good new quality partner. And so we had some conversations and we realized it was a really excellent fit. And so we've launched our work together this year. I think it's a lovely fit because of what Chris and his foundation and his team bring to the table for our joint mission is obvious. They are just really, really good at spreading the word, and Chris's heart and passion. And Well Aware has become quite good at the integrity of our project work and the longevity of our work and maintain a very high success rate. And we're innovating with new technology to further that success rate and longevity of the water systems. So I feel like it's just a really lovely union, and I'm excited to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, was that part of the reason that you reached out to them, Chris? Because their efficiency has been incredible, and I think they've implemented technology in ways that others might not have gotten to quite yet. They're sort of innovative in that approach. Was that kind of what called you to Well Aware?
Well, we were looking for a partner that was located in Austin, so I could take a trip to Austin a couple times. No, so we were really, it was an exhaustive search, and we wanted, a new partner, add somebody to the arsenal for a lot of the reasons that y'all just touched on: the innovation, the efficiency. These are words that they definitely ring a bell for me and get me excited about working with Well Aware. And, I think the exciting part about it is, you look at things like the app, the Well Aware app, Well Beyond. You're talking about drilling a well, but there's such it's not just dropping a well in the ground and then just say, okay, we're done. Yeah. There is a stewardship process, and a process where, your implementing partner on the ground needs to, have a way to communicate with the people that are using the water, and trying to use it efficiently and trying to get the most out of it. So things like the app, things like, Well Aware, having kind of a foothold that they're putting down in Kenya, and we wanted to do more work in Kenya. So there's a lot of reasons, Austin included, that we joined up with Well Aware.
I wanted to touch on some things you mentioned before, Chris, around, economic development and the empowerment of communities where, the simple thing of water can bring these domino effects to a community. Mm-hmm. For those who haven't been able to be on the ground, right, and go see these projects or implement these things, what is it like on the ground there when a well gets installed? What kind of economic value and empowerment does that bring to communities?
Well, there's the very tangible stuff. And first off, again, coming back to it, it's when we go over, we just went to Tanzania to do our Conquering Kili initiative, which we love. It's bringing vets and athletes together and some donors to climb Kilimanjaro. The reason that I went over in the first place, and to catch the same bug, to go visit these villages, and not just the villages that we're putting a well in. We're going to traditional well sites to see kind of the difference in that something like this makes. And so, first we'll take our group to a traditional well site, It's sobering. You get to meet some really wonderful, bright people who have this huge problem that has become normalized. I mean, if you pour a kid a glass of water out of a muddy little pond there that livestock are drinking out of, that kid's going to say, well, this is what I drink. And it's such a shame. So you get that as kind of, you set the table. This is the problem. And a lot of times it's a prospective well site that we're going to do work at. So you get to know the people there, and then you get to go see a place that we've actually implemented a solution. And a lot of things that we touched on, in it being a multifaceted solution is, agriculture is going to improve. People are going to be able to plant crops. Women and girls are going to be able to go to school and work in the community in a way that their awesome potential is actually realized. Pragmatically, we are not exhausting our potential as people in society if some of the most valuable people in the society are spending a ton of their time gathering water. Right. That's the burden that women and girls are shouldering around the world. And there's so many lost hours in the classroom, at work, with families. It's also a dangerous trek for a lot of the women. And it's a long and arduous trek, and it's one that's done all the time. So often to gather unclean water anyways. So, it's, you talk about agriculture, you talk about the economy, you talk about empowering women and girls. You also talk about saving lives. I mean, diarrhea will kill children in East Africa. It doesn't have to be, some waterborne illness that sounds scary. It can be something as bad as dehydration. Yeah. So, there's so many ways that this improves the life of the community that you're implementing this solution. And also it's like the hope, I think, is a big part of it. I mean, that's the intangible is, the hope that something like this brings. We know that there's literally been, conflict over water, armed conflict over water in certain parts of the world, which goes to show you the value of the water. Also, a lot of the people that we work with are like nomadic in that, like, hey, they move around. A lot of Maasai tribesmen, herders, people like that. And when you put in a well, like an area that we're helping, thousands of people, all of a sudden you see this kind of congregation around the well where people are spread out. But again, it speaks to the importance of this resource. And water is life is a saying in East Africa that we hear over and over again, and it rings true.
Sarah, do you want to touch on a little bit of the app? Because I do think that is a feature that brings a lot of efficiency and a lot of stability to the projects. Because like you said, I mean, once you leave, things are going to happen, right? It's still a machine. It's still, they might have some digital aspects to it, but it could break, right? There could be some learnings, when you guys leave, and this is there needs somebody to steward the well, right? So talk about the technology that's been embedded in the organization.
Yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it because I would love to see a lot more awareness around the need for attention to this sophisticated infrastructure in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. And we've been sort of conditioned or educated to think that once the water well is installed, then that's the moment for celebration. And it's really kind of just the starting point. And, in the earlier days of Well Aware, we looked around and we saw that so many of these projects were not lasting past, 6 months or a year. And we thought, gosh, what a colossal waste of resources. But, then looking into it more, we realized more than that, it's a huge devastation to these people that we're promising a new life to, right? And we thought, well, that's just unacceptable. So let's find a tool that could help support these communities long term. At the time, Well Aware was smaller, and we could still drive around to all of our project sites and make sure everything was okay. But for these larger organizations, it wasn't feasible. But in our search for that new tool, we didn't find it. So we thought, because we're a bunch of stubborn people, let's just build it. And so,
in typical Austin way, right?
Right, yeah. And that's what everyone was telling me. You just make it. So we did, though. And now we have this tool, which makes so much sense if you zoom out a minute.
Right.
Because as Chris said, these people are brilliant. They have all of the know-how they need to maintain something. They just need the communication about it. And so there's that. And then there's this exponentially evolving availability of Wi-Fi and mobile coverage in these regions that is not leveraged near as much as it could be to date. So we have built an app that communities who are using our water systems can just open up if they have an issue and do diagnostics.
Wow.
They are prompted to do regular maintenance, which at the same time is educating these people on the mechanics of the well. And it's been a really, really big success in a way we didn't anticipate, because we knew that going into launching the project that unfolding new technology in these regions is oftentimes an uphill climb. We didn't really meet that. I think that communities have been so eager for this kind of touch point and communication when they receive such a lovely gift, but then they're left without any resources or information to keep it alive. Finally, they have something that is an instant communication or resource and a point of contact, because we also have remote chat support available.
Wow.
And they do not feel left alone. They feel empowered, and they are doing an amazing job now at using the tool and keeping their water systems running at such a rate that, we're already seeing our own maintenance costs be dramatically reduced. Even our mileage reimbursements, and having team run out and check on things. We're diagnosing and fixing things remotely. And then that makes the water system last longer, but just by virtue of doing regular maintenance, and also really makes our community partnership that much stronger, which is huge, and also lends itself to sustainability.
I want to touch on, athletes and philanthropy a little bit, because I think, athletes have such a powerful voice. And when athletes talk, people listen, right? No matter what type of issue it is. And so Waterboys, it seems like it's done its sort of growth is athlete oriented, in that you get some incredible people to go out on these trips, do these projects, and then they come back and they're invigorated to share. Right. To share the work that's being done and to share the stories that they go through, because in a lot of these things, the stuff really impacts, our lives just as much as the work on the ground can impact the communities. To get in philanthropy while you're playing seems to be rare. But as you see athletes come up, now, do you see athletes getting more involved in philanthropy across, whatever social issue it might be?
Yeah, I do. I think social media has helped. I mean, it's like a platform where we as athletes could, during the course of my career, realize that we have this big platform, not just, hey, sitting up there at a microphone after a game or, I don't know what it would have been before my time, but we had this direct access point to fans 24/7. And around the inception of Waterboys, that online fundraising thing was really taking off. So I do think it's very viable using athletes' platforms to make a difference. I think it's also important that athletes are careful and that they do speak to the issues that they take on carefully and in an educated manner, and they put the sweat equity into it, which is something that's important to me with this. Is like, hey, I want to be in the trenches doing this thing. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to be doing the drilling, but I know my role and I try to play it. And I think one of the challenges of water and selling that as somewhere that people should devote their time and energy in the United States is that it's an outside the box problem for a lot of Americans. Now, we find out the hard way sometimes that water is really important in this country, and we will continue to do that until we address it. But it's a tough sell for a lot of fans, at least when I got started doing this. And it's also a tougher sell than you would think to your fellow athletes, because a lot of them have their own causes that they're championing. So it's hard to find the right guy or gal who's got a big enough platform, who's not currently enthralled with something else to the point where they can't give you their time. It's like recruiting. You go out and you try to find the right candidates that represent, your organization the right way, your foundation the right way, that can speak to the issues and that are willing to go see the problem, that have the time and energy to do that. So we've been lucky enough through Waterboys to kind of build this collective impact model where I think, number one, you have to realize your strengths and weaknesses as an influencer or an advocate. And some of mine were, name recognition, geography. Like when I started Waterboys, I was in St. Louis. Okay, like the St. Louis Rams fan base, if you put a map of NFL fan bases up, I don't think that red circle's going too far outside of like Missouri. And I realized that I needed other athletes. And so I just started, telling that story to a lot of my peers, and a lot of them were already aware of it, but didn't have a vehicle that they could jump into and drive. And that's a lot of the times what an athlete who's in this supporting role wants to do. They just want to help. They don't have the time or maybe the wherewithal to kind of orchestrate, but they want to join the fight. And so we looked for those people, and we've had a lot of great athletes involved. We've had a ton of football players in the NFL, like 30, 40, 50 guys. We've had women's soccer players. We've had MMA people climb Killy with us. Obviously, we've tapped into the veteran community. So I just think hey, I'm humbly appreciative of how much people have gotten behind my efforts. When I have, that effort multiplied 10, 20 fold because of this collective impact, there's no limit to what we can do. So that's why I've tried to invite my friends, and they've showed up, and fans have showed up too. And it has been an educational process for them where they realize, 785 million people around the world don't have access to clean water. Okay, even some of the people who are more, likely to say, hey, I want to handle America's problems first. Like,
Right.
I think we're all in it together. So personally, I like to work everywhere, but there's also 2 million people in the United States without access to clean water. And so we've done some domestic work as well. And so there's something for everybody in this, as we touched on earlier. It's an economic issue. It's a human rights issue. It's a women's issue. There's something for everybody. And so it's slowly but surely been in the forefront, I think, of more fans' mindsets.
My next question was around just sort of some initiatives in America. And would it be the same things where we still need wells in, like, let's say, for instance, like rural America or something like that? I guess, what are the issues? You said 2 million.
Yeah, 2 million.
In America don't have access. Like, what is the differences, or maybe some of the similarities?
It's probably a little more complicated here domestically because the solutions are more complicated. Like, obviously, we go to Tanzania or Kenya and drop a well in the ground. There's going to be thousands of people that are going to be able to, access this well, and are going to, as a community, kind of share the responsibility. There's way more bureaucratic red tape here.
Right.
There's also, like in an urban area, you're going to run into all these different problems that you're going to run into in a rural area. And I know there are urban water access issues and issues with the quality of the water all over the world, but in the United States, it just feels like the scale of some of these cities are so big, and like some of the infrastructure that's been existent for a long time is maybe gone unchecked. And in rural America, we've done a lot of work where we'll go and we'll put a well in for a single family. So we work on a lot of different scales. We've also done, like I do as a sidebar, some educational equity work under the foundation. And so like a nice kind of intersection for us is water access in schools, because, just like anywhere in the world, if you're not hydrated, if kids aren't drinking water, if they're trading that for sugary drinks, their health's going to go down, their capacity to focus, their capacity to learn and be at their best. And so like we'll put in filtration systems here domestically, all sorts of stuff. But there's a ton of issues that we're going to have to grapple with domestically. And so I don't think it's the worst thing for people to look around the world and say like, hey, we can solve this problem while starting to tackle the issues that we have here right in our backyard.
The last question I'll end, we'll start with you, Sarah, is sort of when you look at, maybe 3 to 5 years down the line and look at some of the goals and successes you would like to achieve, as the organization, as this partnership moves along, what are some of those goals that you would like to see occur?
I'm on an ambitious and lofty goal to be a part of fixing the sector, because there are a lot of organizations who are doing really well-meaning work, utilizing quite a bit of donor dollars and other resources, and it's just not yielding what we planned it to yield, what they planned it to yield. And there are not easy ways, but there are ways to be better. And I'm hopeful that the app that we created is going to be a part of that. But if we could channel all of the resources that are already being put into this sector into the right place, or just even lifting the success rate nominally, we could make such a bigger impact together. So as an organization, we're somewhat limited toward that goal, but as a human myself, I'm sort of I'm on it. I'm trying to talk about it as much as possible and create tools and educate people so that we can be better and we can solve this problem. And to Chris's point, our work can be an example for how we can be better here. And not in the exact same way, because here we have lots of policy problems and red tape and bureaucracy, but as a community-driven approach, and as bringing people together and making water the anchor of community development and prosperity.
Do you want to end on your goals, Chris, maybe for the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. Hey, listen, when we started this thing, we had a plan. It sounded good. We were going to do 32 wells for 32 teams. It was going to be easy to sell this problem. And it would be very symbolic of our league and the NFL. And, like all plans, they change and you have to adapt. And for us, we got creative and eventually traded in that goal once we hit the 32 wells, which was really exciting. We did that, I think, during one of the Super Bowl years. It was awesome. It coincided with our team's success. And then we said, hey, we need to think bigger and we need to move to a people serve goal. And so we moved to 1 million people served was our goal. It still is. I think we can hit that over the next 3 to 5 years. We're halfway there. We've provided, 500,000 people with the gift of clean water, and we're just going to keep rolling down that track. And I think, partners like Wellaware can be so instrumental in just elevating your game to where the next 500,000's easier than the first 500,000. And that's why we're excited to work with them. The innovation, again, we talked about the efficiency, and just, like when you get involved with new people, it just, it's motivating, and, it's exciting. And so I think our domestic work's going to continue to be important. Hometown H2O, working on Navajo Nation, like some of the goals we have here. Just and overall, not just, I don't want to get hung up all on the metrics and these hard goals, but to move this issue into the forefront ultimately of people's thought process here collectively as sports fans, as Americans, because even if, as Sarah said, like, hey, we want to solve the problem in the sector, we know I'm just one person, Sarah's just one person, Wellaware is one group, Waterboys one group, and the scale of the problem's huge. But if we just work in good faith that we're going to not only solve, problems for individuals, but we're also going to educate individuals about the problem, even just people listening to this, that's a win, because I can guarantee you there's some people that probably hadn't thought about this issue, and you never know, that person you talk to could be one contact away from a person that can just solve a ton of problems for us, whether it's because of an idea or resources or a connection. So just keeping the word going and keeping the ball in the air and multiplying, the number of people that care about this problem.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah and Chris. Incredible conversation. I love talking about these topics. Best of luck for you and the team for the next decades to come, and the new partnership. Look, 1 million is going to get there, right? And I think it's 10, 20, 30 million. I think that's what goes along with.
I like that.
With the life's work and journey, right? Into solving, a problem is like you said before, strategy and implementing certain things, and just that's the long game at the end of the day, being consistent and sort of patient, right? In some aspects, but keep grinding and it'll happen. So I appreciate you guys taking the time.
We'll come back to set our next goals.
Yeah. 10 million, and then we'll go to, we'll all go together and we'll report something.
No question.
Okay.
Thank you so much.